Hi, and welcome to How to Build an App with AI. In this part, we're going to start our new app project and start generating code using AI. Oh, and by the way, if you missed the previous parts, check out our playlist right over there. With that said, let's dive right in. So in the previous part, we had started this Xcode project, and then we opened it up inside Cursor, and we installed all those extensions, plugins, and packages. But before we dive into Cursor and start generating code, let me show you how you're going to test out your app. In the previous part, I mentioned something called an iOS simulator, and it is basically a virtual iPhone that sits on your screen and you can interact with it and test your iPhone app. Inside Xcode, I want you to hit this play icon. It should by default be selected. You'll see some sort of iPhone device here. If not, you can tap on this and you can select a different device that you want to play your app on or test your app on. You might not see as many devices on your list as I have because I've gone through several versions of Xcode, and you can always download older devices and older iOS versions if you'd like. But use what you have right now. It might be iPhone 16 or whatever it may be, and then just hit this button. Now on the first run, it's going to boot up this simulator. It's going to take a while. It could take up to a few minutes, but subsequent times, it won't take as long. It's almost like your iPhone is booting up, that startup time. So as you can see, this screen has appeared and it's going to install this app, which I called Test Cursor, literally going to install it on the home screen here and launch it. And you're going to be able to see the results of the code. This is default project code that is given to you when you start a new project. And as you can see this is a preview canvas. It looks like this. It just says hello world with an icon. There you go. You see the app right there, Test Cursor. It's going to launch it. All right, so here's what it looks like. And as you can see, it's exactly like the preview. Now you can interact with this right in this simulator, but there is nothing to do on it. I wanted to show you this. We don't have to rely on Xcode in order to launch the simulator. We want to be able to do the same thing from Cursor, so we don't have to keep switching back and forth. So let's stop this project, and there's a stop button that appears next to the play. You can hit stop, and it's going to cancel out, stop running the project. And then let's switch over to Cursor, and I'll show you now how you can launch the simulator from here. Just in case you are jumping in at this point, what we've done inside Cursor is open up the Xcode project. So when you open up a new window like this, you're going to navigate and browse to wherever you saved that Xcode project to. And for us, that was here. And then we hit open. And then we get all of it. All right, so the first thing we're going to want to do is probably make this text a little bigger so it's easier to see in the video. Up here, you're going to hit this line and then you're going to go show and run commands. And if this doesn't appear, generate build server config, you can search for it by just typing in build server, and you should find that because we installed the SwiftUI extension. So you're going to hit that, give it a couple of seconds, it's going to do something, and then it's going to pop this up. It says select scheme for build server. You're just going to tap on that, and then it's going to go ahead and do its thing. You see in the lower left corner, it says it generated a build server.json file, and it created this new file right here. Now this file specifies what to run and basically all the instructions to launch that simulator you just saw. If you get an error when you try to generate that build server config that we just did, just copy the error message and use AI panel on the right-hand side here. Tell it what you're trying to do. Say this is the error and get it to help you walk you through the steps to troubleshoot that. So now once you have this build server.json, if you switch tabs over to SwiftUI, and just as a reminder, if you don't see this icon, click on this arrow and find the SwiftUI option and then just hit the pin, and it's going to pin it to the bar right here. You're going to switch to this tab, and then you have a run button right here. So you're going to run it, and it's going to go through the same steps. So here you get to select where you want to run it. So we did it on the 16 Pro, I believe. So I'm going to choose the same thing, although I have two here. 18, I think is what we used, not 26. That's the beta. Yeah, 18.3. Okay, so since we already have the simulator launched, it's just going to relaunch the app. So there you go. Now there are two more things we want to set up inside Cursor to have an easier time. Basically gives AI context of what we're trying to do and to give it some guidelines to follow as it's generating code. Now, the more specific you can be, the more accurate AI will be in giving you what you want. So what we can do in that regard is to set up a file called Cursor rules. And in here, you specify some guidelines about how you want it to behave. So inside test cursor, what you can do is just hit this new file button and type in dot. This is a special file called cursor rules. Inside here, we are going to copy and paste a whole bunch of different rules. I'll have a link in the description below the video for this URL for this text that you can just copy and paste it in here. Side note is I got the base set of rules from another YouTube channel called AI JSON when I was learning how to use AI myself, and since have built upon the rules as I've been using AI. So I'm not going to go through all of the rules, but in general, it talks about how we want AI to structure our Swift project, what different keywords or what frameworks to use. So it just gives guardrails for the AI to follow. There's one little section that we need to edit, lines 8 and 9 right here. And it really depends on your project name. So I copied this from my parent affirmation app. This is test cursor. We're just going to want to change this. It just tells the AI, the model, when it generates code and new files, where do we want it to put it? And we want it to put it inside this folder right here. So if you take a look, you're probably going to have one folder, which is the app project name, and another, which is the app project name .xcode proj. And this is the project file, but this is the folder up here where all of the code files go. As you can see, this code file, right? And that's also where our cursor rules go. So just change the path to that. Now the main Swift file, we also need to change this to match what we have here. This is the app entry point, or like all of the code for when the app launches. And you know this because there is this @main keyword here. So look for that. There are only two code files at this point, this one and this one, but you're going to see this one have an @main. That is the file name that we want to specify. So going back to cursor rules, let's change this to test_cursor app, like that. And the rest of it, you don't need to change. Now, this is also project specific. It's just telling Cursor what tools to use as we're building different things. Because this demo is going to be pretty simple, we're not going to use a lot of this stuff, but it doesn't hurt to leave it there anyways. So when you start to build your app and you're thinking about monetizing it or adding analytics, these are also the tools that I would recommend you use anyways. So you can leave that in there. You can always build upon this file and also change things to your liking as you get more experience and you build more iOS apps. But cursor rules, general place for you to put all of the rules you want AI to follow as it's generating your code. Okay, and then now there is another project-specific file that we want to add called instructions. And this is where we're going to lay out the project that we have in mind, like the app idea that we have. We're going to break it down into a series of steps, and we're going to have AI follow these steps one by one. And we're going to check after it completes each step. And that's how we're going to be incrementally building our app. Because in this demo, it's probably not going to be a large app. I will do future videos where we will build apps together using this technique. I just want to show you this instructions file and also how to create it so inside this folder right here where there are all these different files, this time we're going to create a folder, new folder, and we'll just call it instructions. And then here inside this folder, highlight it, we're going to choose new file, and you're going to see it's going to put the file inside the instructions folder. And this one is just going to be instructions.md. And MD is a markdown file. It's essentially another text file. We're going to put the instructions in here. But just a side note, the other thing that's really great with this folder is just keeping everything organized. I'll also put screenshots in here that I want AI to follow. So when we get to the next part where we talk about the design for the app, I will generate the designs with AI, take some screenshots or any reference materials that I want, and I'll put it into this folder. And then when I'm prompting AI and telling it what to build and what to do, I will reference the files in this folder. That's why we're adding it in here, because when you're prompting AI, you can tell it specifically, hey, go look in that file and let's do step 1. Or let's go into this folder and look at this screenshot. I want you to build this screen just like that. So that's what this folder is for. Now, as for what goes inside instructions.md, I'll get to that. But first, let's have some fun. We've done enough configuring and setting up, right? So I want to prompt AI to change our app. Let's say our app currently looks like this with nothing to do. Let's add a button here under the Hello World label. When the button is tapped on, we're going to change this text to say, look, we are using AI. Let's go ahead and do that. So inside this prompt here, what you can do is this. Okay, so let's click the little X here. It should say add context. And this is giving context to AI as to which files you want to work on. Now, even if you don't add context, it will look for the right files to edit and it'll look through your project, but you want to help it along because it's going to give you better results. So if you already know which file you want to modify or which screen you want to tackle, go ahead and click this add context and you can then browse for it. You can search, or you can just, there are some recent files here. Now, this is where it helps to know a little Swift and SwiftUI code, but even if you don't worry, you'll learn over time as you do this, and also I'm here to guide you. So content view, remember how there are 2 files, and this one has the @main. This is the entry point of the app. The other file is actually the screen. It's your only screen, and you can see here, even though you can read code, you may or may not, but I'm assuming this video series is for someone who doesn't know Swift and SwiftUI. Assuming you don't know how to read this, you can still see the text hello world. You can still see the image, like you can recognize some words. And this says globe, which is what you see on this view. This gives you a clue that this is the screen you want to modify. So if you go back to cursor, if you tap on content view, or maybe you search for content view, and you're going to see it. That little check mark means that you've added it as context. You can also hit this X to remove it from the context. Content view. Okay. And then you just ask it to do what you want. There are a couple of other toggles here. This one, there are 2 different modes here. Agent is when you are trying to make some changes. This one is if you want to do research and you want to plan and you want to just find things out, more informational. So we want to do agent, and it's not so important. Even if you have it on ask and you try to do something, it will. But again, any way you can help it along helps. Now this one allows you to choose which model to use. It's set to auto by default, which is a great place to start if you know specifically which model you want to use, because different models are better for different tasks. So Claude is pretty good for coding, is what people are recommending. But these things change really, really quickly. So because it's a race between all the companies right now coming out with models, we're just going to leave it as auto for now. So we don't need to get into that. So let's prompt it. Let's say you hired the developer to make this app. And in this case, AI is the developer. What would you say? You would say, I want a button below Hello World. The button says tap me. And when it is tapped on, I want to change the label that says Hello World and change it to, look, I'm using AI, right? And that's what you would say, and that's what you would type in here. The more specific you can be, the better. Also, this takes some getting used to, but you're not talking to a human being. There's a lot of extra words in conversation that you don't have to add. So things like please, thank you, or do this or do that. You can literally command AI using as little words as possible, as long as you are able to get across what you want it to do. So let's try to be brief, but also specific. So that's what I would write. And that should give us the result that we want. You hit enter and it's going to go and do its thing. So it's going to tell you what it's going to do. It's going to show you the lines of code that it's changing. Red means it's removing it. The other lines are adding. So you can also see here, +6, 6 lines added, 1 line removed. and then you have an option to undo or keep. So we're going to hit keep, and then we can relaunch our simulator and test this out. Now, sometimes AI messes up and it writes code and your project won't build anymore. So when you try to run it, there's going to be some red lines of text here in the terminal, and it's going to have errors. In this case, the build succeeded, meaning that it's going to launch it now. But if there is red text because AI messed the project up, I'm going to show you what. But let's take a look at this launched app first. So it's going to go ahead and launch that simulator, and we can see our changes. And what's funny is that you can see there's a bunch of waiting, right? You give this command, and then it does its thing. And sometimes launching the simulator takes a while too. Oh, it did it. It just didn't pop up the simulator. You could potentially open up multiple windows and work on 2 projects simultaneously. So while you're waiting for one to do its thing, you're commanding and checking, reviewing the other one, and just like switching back and forth, almost like playing multiple poker tables. So it added a button. This is a default, like standard looking iOS button, and it did exactly what we told it to do, which is great. Now that's just one example of an AI prompt. There are a couple of different types of prompts that I'm going to walk you through for different purposes during this development phase of the app. But let's go back to what you do when your app doesn't build anymore. So I'd say there's 3 things you can try to do. The first would be to try to get AI to fix it. And what you can do is say, my app doesn't build. Or you can say error. You could say there is an error. But remember, as brief as possible, you're not talking to a real human being. But what would be better than just saying error is actually giving context. So you see how this is the terminal and it gives you all this output text, but there's actually multiple terminals. There's this one, which we were running our homebrew commands on. And there's this launch one, which we were using to launch the app. So chances are when you were trying to hit this button to launch the app, the red text would have come up in this launch terminal window. You can actually point cursor to look at the text in this window. It's like a file. So I'm going to hit X on this content view. I'm going to add context. And this time I'm going to go to terminals and I'm going to choose launch. So now it has context of this text here. And then I would just say error and I would just send it. Now, if I send it now, it probably won't find anything. I don't think. Yeah. So it couldn't find anything, but that's what you would do. And then it would go ahead and try to fix it. And then you would be presented with the options again, undo or keep, and you would keep it. And then you would try to launch it again. And there might be another error. You just repeat that process. But at some point, you're going to start to realize that AI perhaps doesn't know how to fix this error, or perhaps it's just made things even worse. So you can undo. Let's revert and walk back a few steps before we made all these changes. So let's say we told AI to do this. This is our prompt, and it messed something up so badly that it made you regret giving AI this instruction. You want to walk all the way back before you gave it that instruction. So then you can say restore checkpoint back to right before you gave it this instruction. So hit this checkpoint and it'll tell you discard all the changes up to this checkpoint. You can say, yeah. And now you're right at the cusp of sending this to AI, and all your code would have been reverted. And then you can go even farther back, or you can redo it. You can scroll forward. Let's say you change your mind. You just click here. Let's click on this command. And you're essentially jumping forward or backwards to different points in time. Furthermore, this conversation that you're having right here is just one of potentially many conversations in a long history of conversations. You can show chat history like this because you can always start a new chat. So let's say for this chat, we were talking about a specific feature. You can then start a new chat. It erases all the history. It doesn't erase the code. It just starts a new chat. It's almost like a new conversation you're having with someone in a different date. Now, why would you want to do this? Because at some point, you just need to hit reset. You might find that AI is really messing up, or it's not behaving the way you want it to. it might be referencing things from the history in the chat that you don't want it to reference or have context against. So you just hit this plus button and start a new chat. And you can see here, I can always go back to previous chats. If I show chat history now, you can see we have a couple of different chats that we've had, and you can always go and revert to some point, right? So that is how you undo, and that's a great option. You can even choose to undo a set of instructions instead of asking AI to fix it, like what I showed you here, telling it to fix the error. Third option is after you get the hang of it and you start to recognize some Swift and SwiftUI, you probably see the same errors over and over. You're going to know how to fix it. You can just fix it yourself. You can go into whatever file and you can change the code, or you can jump into Xcode and you can go and also build the project here, see the errors and fix it. So that's not something I would recommend if you don't know Swift and SwiftUI code, because that won't be very helpful. But yeah, between undoing and telling AI to resolve the errors, you're going to be able to go a long way. Now, I will mention source control briefly now. We're not going to dive into how to use that, but there is a better way to undo and restore state, and it is using something called source control. This is something that for developers is second nature. It's a way to do versioning for your code, so you can always jump back to different versions, or if you're trying to test something, but you're not sure if it's going to work, you can create what's called a branch, basically a little workspace, if you will. Play with the code, see if it's going to work or not. Then you can ditch that workspace, or you can merge it into the good copy, the master copy. Using source control and specifically GitHub is something I'm going to do in a separate video. And even if you don't know how to code, you'll be able to use this. And I think it's going to be much more powerful than just undoing. But in conjunction, I think it's going to be the best option, the safest way. Because I know a lot of people who don't know how to code and they're using AI to try to build an app. They tell me, I see their posts, they often have to restart from scratch. Once their project gets so bad, they don't know what to do. They can't revert back to a clean state. They just ditch the project and start all over. And I don't want that to happen to you. I don't think it needs to get to that point. All right, so now we've tried out a little bit of prompting, a little bit of code generation. Let's talk about the different types of AI prompts you can use when you're building your project. So what we just went through was what I call a do something prompt, because we have specific instructions of what we want AI to do to our project. But when you're not so sure how to go about something, you can also just ask AI. So I oftentimes will ask something like, I want to implement this feature. What are my options? Don't do anything. Just tell me what I can do. And we say don't do anything specifically because I find that the AI model has a tendency to just go off to the races and start implementing something, even though that wasn't your intention. You can then follow on once it gives you different options to ask it, well, which option is best, or which option is suitable for what I'm trying to do. So you can try to challenge it with different questions. And again, you're just trying to find out the best way you should go about it. And then once you figure that out, you switch gears and use the do something type of prompt, and then you tell it to go and do it. Another type of prompt I use is the tell me about my project type of prompt. So for example, I might ask it something like, I know we implemented some view tracking, but I want to implement a streaks feature. So can you tell me what we've done in that regard? And then it will review the code and it will tell you what it's done. So this is where you want to find out information about your project. You can ask it also if things are being done properly, if things are being done the best way. So you might say something like, I want in the future for the user to be able to switch all the colors in my app to a different theme. Are we set up to do that? Or how can we set up our project and architect it in the best way to easily do that? And again, just tell me, don't do anything. So that's an informational prompt. Another type of prompt that I use often is one where I give the AI context of an image. So that could be, I've designed something in a different app. Maybe it's Figma. I take a screenshot and I can upload that screenshot to the chat or add it to the project in the instructions folder like we talked about before, and then give it context to that file. And I can say something like, hey, take a look at this file. How can we change this screen to match that? Another time is if, let's say, implement something, but it's not quite right. And we launch it in the simulator and we can see that something's off. What we can do is take a screenshot in the iOS simulator and we can upload that to the chat and we can say, hey, look at our project currently. This label is overlapping this other text. Can you fix it? So giving AI context and that visual feedback of what the issue is also very helpful for it to be able to fix it. And then the last type of prompt that I use is to ask AI about errors that are happening in the app. Perhaps it's a build error, like we talked about the red text at the bottom. You can ask it like, it's my project's not building, what's up with this error? Or perhaps there is actually a bug happening in the app saying like, when I'm performing these actions, this unexpected thing is happening. So what AI will often suggest is to add output to different parts of your app. So then it can see as you're performing those actions, it can just look in the terminal and it can see the output and it can see the instructions you're following. So as we go through the process of building apps with AI, these scenarios will come up and then we'll use these prompts to tackle them. But for now, let's try to build something. And for that, we need an app idea first. Okay, so I was going to cover app ideas in this part, but it's running a bit long, so we will do it in the next part. Let's do a quick recap. In this part, you've learned how to open up your Xcode project inside Cursor and how to configure it by adding a build config, instructions.md, and also cursor rules so that AI can follow your guidelines. You've learned how to launch the iOS simulator and test your app. You've got a taste of prompting AI to make changes to your app. You've learned a few different types of AI prompts that will be useful for you when you're building your app. And you learned how to undo any changes and how to tell AI to help you fix errors. In the next part, we're going to talk about app ideas and how to split it up into step-by-step instructions for the instructions.md file. And then we are going to prompt AI to create it. We'll also cover how to generate designs with AI and how to integrate those designs into your project. If you're enjoying the series so far, please drop a comment below and let me know. All right, thanks, and I'll see you in the next lesson.